Okay, so the question of the day is, should I go to law school? Of course, I've already been to law school, so obviously the question is, should you go to law school? But when I was researching it, I noticed that more people typed in, should I go to law school? So lots of stuff to think about there. The biggest one in my mind being, do you want to be a lawyer? At this point, you're going to need to ignore the sales pitch that a lot of people are going to give you, that law is a good all-round degree. Law is not a good all-round degree. It is not. There are plenty of rationalizations like, oh, it taught me strategic decision making and I really feel like I learned X, Y, and Z and will teach you how to do blah, 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 and those skills will be great in this career or that career or whatever. Most of that is complete and utter baloney, okay? You need to ignore that. And the easiest way I can demonstrate to you to ignore that is to actually look at the subjects you're going to need to study inside the law degree that you're considering doing and look at them and go, right, is this a technical legal subject? Will I use that in any career other than as a lawyer or an attorney? And as you do that, what you're going to notice is the vast majority of what you are doing is learning law. You're learning about constitutional law, you're learning about tort law, you're learning about contract law and equity and trust and competition law and whatever. What you're doing throughout that process is providing this foundation level knowledge of black letter law that you can then build upon as you actually go into your career. Now, of course, most lawyers will tell you that the majority of what they learned in university they don't actually use in their career, and they have learned far more since they started working as a lawyer, but that is a different issue to talk about. If you're falling for this trick that spending a vast amount of money on a law degree while not actually ever wanting to be a lawyer is a good idea, I thoroughly encourage you to rethink it. There are a tiny, tiny, tiny number of circumstances where that might be a good idea, and you're probably not in those circumstances. So just accept, please, for the love of everything, law is not a good all-round degree. So if you are going into it and you don't actually want to be a lawyer, don't do law. Do something else. Do something else that will take you a similar amount of time and cost you a similar amount of money. And that's a good way to think about it, which is, well, I could do law, but I could also do this, or I could do that, or I could do that, and these might be other courses, or they might be something else in total. They might be going and doing an internship, or learning how to run a business, or starting something else. It is a lot of money, it is a lot of time, and it is a lot of stress if you don't want to go into the career for which you will effectively be preparing yourself for by going into a law degree. So that is the easiest answer, which is if you have no interest in being a lawyer, then you shouldn't go. And the reason I started there, of course, is because if you want to be a lawyer, then you actually have to go to law school, so you've got no choice. So the only reason you would possibly be asking, should I go to law school, is because you're not yet thoroughly convinced that you want to be a lawyer. So my guess is, if you're in that sort of circumstance, that you haven't been convinced by everything I've just said so far. So I'm going to deal with a couple more factors as to why you might or might not want to go to law school. Fundamentally, what I'm going to come back to, if you wanted to skip to the punchline, is only go to law school if you definitely want to be a lawyer. But we're going to talk about how to actually come to that decision too. So let's say we'll take a few of the common reasons people might want to go to law school and might convince themselves that that's a good idea. The first is, I've got good grades and I can't think of anything else to do. So you've got sufficient marks to get into law school, but you actually have no clue what else you might want to do in your life. This is an awkward situation, but basically what I would encourage you to do is take time to figure out what you do want to do before leaping into something that's going to take so much time and so much money. I don't think doing tertiary education just for the sake of it, when you actually have no clue even what you might vaguely want to do, is a very sensible idea. I think you're better off taking a little bit more time to think about it rather than just defaulting to something. Because again, I come back to this question of opportunity cost. If you do end up going all the way through your law degree and you accumulate the debt that comes with that, you've spent a lot of time and a lot of money for no particular purpose. If you decide what you actually wanted to do was to open a florist down the road. So these are difficult decisions to make, and I'm not going to pretend that everybody needs to make the absolute right decision at that exact moment that's going to carry through in their entire lives, but I think it's worth investing a bit of time into it and not just going, well, can't think of anything else to do, so I might as well do that. That's not a sensible method of decision making. Connected with that, but a little bit different, is this concept that there are sciencey people and then there are artsy people. And if you're an artsy person but you have good marks, then you should probably just go to law school, because that's like one of the harder humanities style courses. And again, I come back to this concept that that's a decision making by default process, which is I'm not sciencey, I am humanities oriented, and therefore I should go into law. Terrible reason to go into law comes back to the same reasoning as before, so I won't repeat myself fully. Similarly terrible in this sort of realm is the idea of going to law school because your parents are lawyers, or because your father or your mother is a lawyer and therefore you're going to follow in the family footsteps. This is really just you avoiding having to make a decision for yourself and going down the default path that has been apparently chosen for you through genetics or through whatever. And I don't think that's a very good idea either. Why? Because law has a high attrition rate, not so much law school, although that's got a fairly high attrition rate, but the practice of law has a high attrition rate. A lot of people leave the practice of law very early on in their careers. I personally think that the reason a lot of people leave law early on in their careers is because they didn't spend the time actually deciding that they wanted to be lawyers in the first place, but rather just let themselves drift into law and thought, oh, well, I've done a law degree now, I might as well become a lawyer for a few years and see what it's like. They have a tendency to become extremely dissatisfied very quickly. Finally, the one that I do hear a lot as a reason to go to law school with a view to becoming a lawyer is I'm good at arguing, or I was on the debate team, or whatever. This confident, expressive individual who thinks that because they can argue forcefully with people, that will make them an effective lawyer. Personally, I think that those people are obnoxious lawyers and very difficult to deal with. But that put to one side, being able to argue well will help you in a fairly small component of legal practice, okay? Unlike what television has attempted to persuade you the practice of law is like, most of your day is not spent arguing with people about stuff. You don't walk the corridors at this brisk pace going, yeah, but what about that case? What about that? Oh yeah, that's right, do this, legislation, but judge, call it, do this, go to court, whatever. It's not like that. If you can argue well, that's great. But if you're just telling yourself that because you've got a fat head, then that's not very helpful either. Most of your time is not going to be spent arguing with people, and as a result, that in and of itself is not a very good reason to go to law school. These are all very negative things. And the positive thing is this: you should go to law school if you want to become a lawyer, because you have to. But how do you know if you actually want to become a lawyer? That's really the difficult part of this question, because very few people know in advance what being a lawyer is going to be like. Law is not alone in that, of course. Very few people know what being an engineer is going to be like, or an accountant, or a teacher, or whatever, until they actually get into it. You might have some idea, but knowing what the field involves in the study of law and knowing what the practice of law actually involves on a day-to-day basis are two very different things. So you may have done legal studies at school and got an appreciation for the system in which law functions, but you've never set foot in a law office. You don't quite know what that means in a practical sense. So my number one tip, let's say you've gotten through all these things and I haven't dissuaded you thoroughly from going to law school yet, and you think, well, I might want to be a lawyer, but how am I even supposed to know the answer to that? I think I want to be a lawyer. Find a lawyer. They're not very hard to find. Find a few lawyers. Go to LinkedIn, go to social media, just jump on Twitter and tweet something out randomly. You'll get some responses. And ask this question: what do you actually do during the day as a lawyer? Don't ask these questions. Do you enjoy being a lawyer? Yes, I do. Interestingly, not too long ago, there was a study that said 7 out of 10 senior lawyers don't recommend becoming a lawyer, so take that for what it's worth. But I would say yes, I do. But I am me. What you need to figure out is, are you interested in doing the lawyery things that lawyers do, which means you need to know what that is. Because the truth of being a lawyer is you're going to spend a lot of time sitting in front of a computer. You're going to spend a lot of time speaking with people on the phone, probably, sometimes in your office, and you're going to spend a lot of time reading stuff and writing stuff. You might even spend time cutting and pasting with scissors and glue from time to time, or sticky tape, or putting folders together, or punching holes, or fixing the printer. I know these aren't very glamorous descriptions of what law is like, and it certainly has the glamour to some extent. Yes, if you are in the right field, will probably go to court sometimes, which is unlikely to be an experience similar to what you've seen the experience be like, so I'd encourage you to go to a courtroom. Go to a civil hearing, listen to the process, see what actually happens. Is it still interesting to you, or does it look as boring as all get out? So I encourage you, reach out to some lawyers and ask them that question. What do you actually do during the day? Ideally, you want to ask people who are truthful. You also want to ask people who are working in your jurisdiction, or perhaps even in an area. If you have a particular idea of an area that you are thinking of, family law, personal injuries, commercial litigation, insolvency or bankruptcy, commercial transactions, buying and selling businesses, mergers and acquisitions, whatever it may be, if you have a vague concept of an area that you think you are attracted to work in, see if you can find one of those people and ask them. Most lawyers are actually fairly happy to talk about themselves. Whether that's because we've got massive egos or not, I don't know, but they try to be helpful. Some won't. Some are crusty curmudgeons who are not going to help you in any way, shape or form. Ignore them, go for the people who are being friendly, and see what you can find out. That is the best and only way to decide whether you should go to law school and subsequently become a lawyer. And that is all I had to say.